All right. So we're going to be going into DOM now, and I'm going to be explaining two things in DOM, two major things that you need to understand in DOM. Now, the first thing is going to be your what? Your properties. First is going to be your method, and you're going to have what? Properties. Now, these are the two things I'm talking about. First of all, we'll talk about method. Then next, we'll talk about properties. What do we mean by DOM method and DOM properties? Now, in CSS, we did what? We did, what were the things that we did in CSS DOM? In the CSS DOM? No? Talking about the major concepts in CSS DOM. Yeah? No, not exactly. We talked about some things in CSS. Yeah? We talked about selectors. We talked about padding. We talked about that's box model. We talked about display. We talked about position. Those are DOM. Those are DOM properties in CSS. Now, those DOM properties are used in what? In manipulating HTML. You manipulate HTML with display, right? You manipulate HTML with your position. Manipulate a lot of things, even selectors. Now, that's the same thing you have with your JavaScript. In your JavaScript DOM, you have two major things. You have your method, and then you have your what? Your properties. First, you have method. Second, you have what? Properties. Methods and properties. And I'm echoing this because I want you guys to understand what methods and properties are. Now, first of all, your method, which is what we're going to be dealing with at first. Now, what exactly are your DOM methods? What exactly are your DOM methods? Your DOM methods are basically those things you use in selecting HTML elements inside of your JavaScript. Again, your method, your JavaScript method, or your DOM methods are basically those things or those methods you use in taking HTML elements inside of your JavaScript. Now, in your CSS, what are your methods? What do you think your methods are? What did I just call JavaScript methods? I'm asking question. For functionality, right? Now, what is the equivalent in CSS? Huh? How do we take HTML element and style them in CSS? Hmm? What are they called? Huh? Selectors. Selectors. That's what I'm looking for. Selectors. So how do you take HTML elements and style them in CSS? Selectors. It's the same way you now what? Take HTML elements and give them functionality in JavaScript. And that's what you use what? Method. That's what your methods are. So methods will help you take HTML elements and give them functionality in JavaScript. Now, in JavaScript, you now have a lot of methods. First of all, you have get elements by ID. By ID. Okay, good. So you have get elements by what? You have get element by class name. Then you have what? Get element by what? Tag name. You understand? Then you also have query selector. Okay, let me just. Then you have query selector also. Now, you have a lot of them, but this is what we are basically going to be talking about. So first of all, I'm going to be explaining get element by ID. I'm going to explain get element by class name. I'm just talking about get element by what? Tag name, then query selector and what? Query selector all. Now, these are the things that we'll be discussing in details right now. So the first one is what? An event is an event. We talked about it in our last class. So it's an event, and okay, we'll talk about that later. But for now, talk about this. So we have what? Get element by ID. Now, one thing about your JavaScript method is that it is very, very much easier to understand just by the name. So what does get element by ID mean? By the ID, right? That means if you have an ID in HTML, so let me just give you an example of what I'm saying. So now if I want to get this particular ID right here, what will I say? Get element by ID, and I'm going to select the ID of Ed. If I say get element by what class name, what am I saying? Get element by the class. If I say get element by tag name, get element by the what? Tag. Do you understand? And if I say get elements by okay, and if I say query selector, now we'll get to query selector. Now, basically, what query selector is that query selector is universal. Query selector is universal. It can select anything inside of it. You can select tag, you can select what's the name? Classes, can select elements, ID, you understand? You can select anything inside of it. That's what query selector is. Now, query selector is just like your CSS selector. You understand? If you want to select ID, how will you select it? In your CSS. If you want to select ID, how will you select it in your CSS? Hash, right? That's exactly what query selector is saying. So if you want to select an ID instead of query selector, you have to use what? Hash. Now, I'm going to explain that. But for now, let us go into this place. So now, for instance, I can have what? ID. This has an ID of my button, isn't it? I can come right here and I can say const or let btn. Let me just use let for now. Let btn equals what? Document dot get element by ID. Now, can you see the syntax? Document. This document is referring to what? I explained this to us before. HTML. You understand? It's referring basically to what? HTML. Saying that you want to get your HTML, a particular element inside of your HTML document. And what kind of element are you getting? You are getting a what? An ID. You understand? And what's the ID here? The ID is what? My BTN. So you can go ahead and say my BTN. Now, this will automatically say, okay, you are getting an ID of what? My BTN. That's basically what it's saying. So HTML, sorry, your JavaScript basically helps you to select, JavaScript done rather, helps you select your HTML element or JavaScript. And what does it do? And how do you select? You select it using your method. So your method is like your selector. I hope it selects everybody now. Now, let's now say you want to what? Console.log the value of this. Can easily say what? Console.log btn. Just to see what the value is. So if you go ahead and you check it out, as you can see the value. Value is what? Button ID, my btn, and what? Click me. You understand it now? So that is basically what it's saying. So button hash my btn. I hope it's clear to everybody. Yes, like it's saying that this particular thing is a button and it has an ID of what? My btn. That's why I said button hash my btn. Then you should probably say the value also. Now there should be the value here. Come here, let us scroll down. Okay, now see the value here. Text content is what? Click me. You understand? Which is this? That's the value. So now this basically is what your this thing is talking about. That's your JavaScript method is talking about. So your JavaScript method is basically saying that I'm going to help you pick a particular element, and I'm going to give you functionality. That's all. That's what JavaScript method does. Now, all these things that I'm not seeing here is what we call properties. So you have access key. Now we're going to talk about one things that actually makes nonsense. We're going to talk about now first child. These are properties. Form. These are properties. Then you have inner HTML. Can you see? Click me. These are properties. ID, my button. These are properties. Text. Now properties are now basically the properties of that particular element. You know, I told you that your JavaScript DOM has two particular things that are involved. The first is what? method. Second one is the properties. The property is not like the property of what's the name? Let me see property. The things that actually brings together the element. So in your HTML, it's so in your JavaScript, it's not easy to change that particular HTML property. That's what it's saying. Right now, what's the initial property here? Click me, right? You've seen me using that HTML before. You've seen me using that text. That means I'm trying to change the original property of what? Of that HTML element. I can now say dot inner text. I can change what? Click them. Meaning that I've changed that particular property. So what am I saying? I can come here and say btn dot what? Inner HTML equals to what? Don't click me. So now if you come right here now, you should have what? Don't click me. When I've changed that property. Now let me open this place again and let us see what we have as inner HTML. As you can see, inner HTML has changed what? Don't click me. But initially it was what? Click me. Now, basically what it's saying is that you are trying to change that property, that HTML property with what? With JavaScript. That is what property is. So we'll get to property also, but I need to understand what property. I hope everybody gets the whole idea of property now. So your method is selecting that HTML property, sorry, that HTML document or element. Then your property is changing the originally set property of that particular document. Is it just like your CSS? You have selectors and then you have CSS property. You don't change the color of that particular property. Initial color of most property is what? Black. So if I want to change the property, I can say color of what? Red. I'm changing the color. That's the same thing with this. Initial property is what you set in HTML, which is what? Click me. If I now say inner HTML and I change the click me to what? Don't click me. I've changed that property to what? Don't click me. That's what properties are. So method gets those elements. Property what? Change them in JavaScript. I hope everybody understands it. That is basically what your properties are. So now, as you can see, I said what? btn.inner HTML and I changed to click me. Now I'm going to talk about some properties, not all. We'll talk about inner HTML, we'll talk about inner text. We'll go ahead and we'll talk about I think this, there's one more that I'm looking at here. Yeah, so we'll talk about text content and then we'll talk about value. So all of this is talk about them. Actually, we'll still talk about a lot of them, but just for the sake of our time, we'll talk about inner HTML. We'll talk about inner text, what inner text means, inner text. We'll talk about value. What was the last one again? Text content. And these are the four now these are the four now these are the four properties that we'll be talking about. So we have inner HTML, we have inner text, then we have value and what? Text content. Now, do you understand what get element by ID does now? Is it clear? Is it clear to everybody? Now, next one is what? Get element by class name. Now, I need you to note the typo, right? Or spelling. Your get element by ID and your get element by class name. What's the difference? Look at it. Just give me the difference. You say? You say? Good. You have get element by ID and you have get elements by class name. Do you understand it now? Element by ID and element by class name. So please let me take a call outside. Element by ID and element by class name. Do you understand it now? Now, when you have element by ID, you're saying you're trying to get now. Just this all explains what I'm saying about ID and class names. ID is saying that what? You are taking one single entity or single element. You understand? Single element. Class name is like a collection of elements. You understand it now? That's why there is an S for class name. Yeah. Dot. So that's what you're saying. We are having header dot this dot that. Now, the thing about JavaScript is if you are calling anything, that's why your elements they have to be unique in JavaScript. So if you're going to be giving, so for instance, now if in your HTML, if you're giving something a particular ID, right, and that ID was repeated, what you have to do is that I can still come here. So now what am I saying? In my HTML now, I have something like, I have something like this. I'm going to come to my H1, and I'm going to call it new button. Now in this place, you know, let's say I've given it a particular ID here that says head. Now I have two H1 elements that has what? Head. But the only one that I want to have effect is what? This one, right? Now, how exactly am I going to make this work? I can make this work by giving this another ID. I can say head 2. Now, if you check it out, I've given this how many IDs? 2 IDs. First of all, it has head. Secondly, it has head 2. Now, I can start with this head, and I can call my JavaScript this head 2. So easily, I can come here and I can say const text equals to document dot get element by ID, and then we can call it what? Yeah, I saw it. Head 2. You understand? Now, so it is only going to pick this one because the only one that has head 2 is what? This first one. Now, if you say that now it is going to still happen because even though ID is supposed to be 1, you've given 2 elements the same ID. It's just like that. You're giving 2 elements the same ID, so they will have the same style or the same functionality. Because of time, it's still the same thing. It's just the same thing with your HTML. If you style this particular head now, okay, why is it that if you give this particular one, let me just show you in CSS. If you have hash head and then give it a color of red, why is it that both of them will now have a color of red? Sorry, just a moment. So we have this is actually wrong. No, let me check it out. But that's not the reason. That's not even be the reason. See, no longer this one. I've seen the issue. Okay, that's what it is. In the CSS, it was the what? It's still there. That's not the reason. There's a particular issue going on here. Okay, I think I understand it. So, the head and the no. What is happening now is that no, the reason is because it is now recognizing this one as a different entity. Maybe this is a new upgrade because this was not how it's supposed to be. So it's not recognizing this one as a new entity. Well, because number one, it has head, it has a space, and it has head 2. That means it has what 2 what's the name? 2 values or 2 different IDs. So it's not only going to choose the one that has what 1 ID, just like we said, 1 ID. But that's something that you know what? Let's try and use edge, and let us say text dot inner HTML. You click the button. Let us check it out. Now, we've changed the value of text here. This has ed and this has ed. So let us check it out. Let's see what we have. Sorry? No, doesn't. So text.inner HTML. Let me change inner HTML. First of all, click the button. So you click the button, it has changed. So that means only one is actually changing, which is this one. Okay, I think I understand now. Only one is now changing, which is now this one. But if you want this ed2 to change, now it's not affecting the ed2, but it's an ID. Now let us try and give it a class instead, and let's see what happens. So let's say class, and then we'll check it out and see what we have. Okay. Get elements by class name. Now let us check it out. So what exactly happened with your class name? Now, what did I just do here? I gave it an H1, and I said class equals to what? Ed and ed2. Then you also have another class that has what? Ed. That means this two H1 has the same what? Class, right? Then I came here and I said context equals to what? Documents dot get elements by class name, and I called what? These two classes, right? Ed, meaning I've selected the two H1, isn't it? I said, what you're looking at me. Don't you understand? No, I'm coming. Let me explain this first. Don't you understand what I just did? Eh? You have your H1. What's the class name here? Ed. Ed and Ed2. So two class names. Wait. You have two class names here. First one is what? Second one is what? Good. Your other H1 here is what? Good. So what class name does he have? Forget the other one that I'm talking about. But just understand this. Now, in this place, what did I do? I said context equals to what? Document that get elements by what? Class name. Ed. So what have I just done here? Exactly. I'm calling this ed inside of my JavaScript. Then I said text.inner HTML equals what? Click the button. What is it supposed to do? And new button to what? You click the button. Good. Now, if you check here, what happened? Nothing happened. Why? One this thing. Okay, yes, you are there. You are on the way. It's one is in the but what? Why is it not now happening? Why is it not working? I explained to you that some tags are what? Basically used for a single entity. While some tags are used in what? Grouping other elements. For instance, you have your div tags, which can put tags in what? In different sections. You have your section tag and your semantic tags. Remember your semantic tags. Now, in this case, I'm using class on H1. If I'm to style this class now in CSS, it's going to work. We've tried it before. But your JavaScript, it is not working. Why? Your H1 is not meant to have a class tag or a class functionality. It's meant to have a what? An ID functionality. Now, I'm going to come back to you. I'm just trying to explain why it is important to understand IDs and what classes. So classes is a what? Entire entity. But when you're talking about single entity, you're talking about what? Class. Sorry, you're talking about ID. Classes for what? Entire entity, a lot of entity. Then what? Classes and IDs are for what? Single entity. So now, when I use class here, it did not work. But when I use ID, it actually what? Works. Now that is basically what your classes and your ID is going to do. Now, coming back to what you were saying, if I change it to .ed now, what's going to happen? Let us check it out. Now, both of them work actually. So basically, why? Yes, that means it's only going to choose, just like he pointed out, it's going to choose one particular entity specific. The only one that has ed is what? This one of H1. But you understand? Then the one that has ed and ed2 is going to be omitted. Why? because it only focuses on that one that has hash head, the ID of it.
Why is like CSS now?
In JavaScript also, it's still the same thing. It's still the same thing that happened in your JavaScript.
Okay. When we are studying something and this one is
No, that's what I'm still saying. Even in JavaScript, as long as you're using ID, it's going to take only one. So in this place now, what do you think is going to change here? Only the second one. Similarly, in this place, if you are styling with ID, what is it going to take? So let's check it out and let's see what we have. If I change this to what hash now, what are we going to have? It's still only the second one that changes to red. Which one changed? Yeah, you click the button. ID is saying that it is unique. So the only one that has that ID of what head is going to what change. It's going to what get styled and it's going to have that functionality. That's what ID is saying. You understand it now? So that's basically what ID is. Now, moving on. We've talked about uh, some of these things. We talked about get elements by ID, and I'm very sure that everybody understands it. We've talked about get elements by class name. I'm also very sure that everybody understands class name. Is it clear to everybody now? Do you understand class name? Now, moving on, we'll talk about get elements by tag name. Now, what do we mean by get elements by tag name? What we are saying, when we're talking about tag name, we are saying you want to get a particular element by its tag name. So now let us get this 2H1 by the tag name. Let's say we're going to change this from I was wrong. Okay, we're going to change this from get element by ID to what? To where is that is wrong? Why is this? Is it my mouse that is doing this? So let's go ahead and check this out again. Okay, so now let us get the value of this H1 in our document. So when I'm in our JavaScript, so what am I saying? You have what? H1. Now, in this case, I want to change all the values of this particular H1 in my JavaScript. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, I have H1. So I want to change the values. I want to make sure that, okay, whenever I come into my browser, the value that I'm seeing here will not be what I'm going to be saying right here. So I want to change all the properties of what? H1. How will I do that? I use what? Tag name. I can come here and I can say document dot what? Dot get element by tag name. Then what is the tag name right here? What is the tag name here? Eh? H1. Exactly. So you write your tag name right here and you say H1. Now let us get it by what? H1. Yes, sir. Hmm? That's what I'm saying. I want to change all the H1 tags. So to change all the H1 tags, I can say text dot inner HTML, right? Equals to what? Now if I change it to hello world, what am I gonna have? Hello world. Hello world. Which So now let us check what we have. So we should have what? Okay, let me check it out again and let me see. So context equals to document.get element by class name. Now let me check console.log text first. And let me see what I have. I'm going to refresh this. Okay, the inner HTML now is hello. No, let me change it. Instead of inner HTML, let me use text content. Then text content. Text content. And let me check it out. First. Inner text is if inner HTML is not working, inner text can work. But let's check it out. Inner text. I think there is an issue right here because it's not even supposed to show like this. Okay, now let me try something like text. Okay, let me use this index 0. Let's check what we have. Okay, this is not what I want. This is not what I actually want. Okay, let's try something like this. 0, then 1. Let's see. Now, sir, I will explain that later. No. That's not even that's not the issue. That's not the issue there. Okay, so now when I did console.log text equals to document that get element by tag name, and then we have h1. Now, what this is saying is I've gotten that particular element by what? By the tag name, and then the element name is what? H1. You understand? Now, I now said text.inner HTML. Let me remove this first. Text.inner HTML equals to hello world. You understand? Now, it should work, but it's not working. Now, we have text.inner HTML equals to what? Hello world. Now, this right here is now being treated as an array. You understand what I'm trying to say? It's not being treated as an array because in your what's an array again? Array is like collection of what? Of data type, of different data type, of data. You understand? Now, in your H1 data, right, you have two different data. The first is what? The first H1 that says what button has been clicked. The second is what? Second one that says new button. You understand? Now, if I want to, I now have to specify the H1 that I'm talking about. Am I picking all the H1s, or I'm just picking just one particular H1? You understand? So if I'm picking one H1, I have to specify the H1 I'm picking. So if I want to specify the first one, array starts from where? 0, right? Isn't it? If I want to pick the first one right here, I have to specify the array of 0. So I can put what? My bracket here and say 0. Now, if you check this out, you should have what? Hello world. That's the first one. Similarly, if I want to take the second one, I can also have what? 1. And the second one is going to what? Change, which is now what? Hello world. Now, I can also still go ahead and say text, then 0. You understand? Dot inner HTML. You understand? So this now says welcome to JavaScript. Now, the first one is now going to change what? Welcome to JavaScript. Second one is now going to what? Hello world. What if there are not two H1? Yeah. You only have one H1. And yeah, you can just go, you still have to use the 0 to specify because JavaScript is going to assume that it's an array. Because it's going to assume that in your code, you're going to have multiple H1s. You understand? So it works based on assumption. So you still have to specify that. So if you have only one, so just put 0. So what am I saying? Let me show you what I'm saying. If I comment this one out now, You see that only one, now as you can see, it's still working. It says what? Welcome to JavaScript. And there's an error here because this one is saying that this one does not exist. So if you check it out now, as you can see, welcome to JavaScript. Now let me remove this error so you see what I'm saying. Because I know you asked. So what's the question? Let me remove this one and see if it's going to work. As you can see, it is not working. So you see, I have to specify that in an array. No, even its ID. No. Because IDs are unique. Class name as your H1 tag, you can have multiple H1 tags. Just a moment. JavaScript, just the way JavaScript is assuming that you can have multiple H1 tags, it's also assuming that IDs you as a developer can have only one ID with one name. Because it's possible. I'm coming. It's very, very possible for you to like create an application and then you don't. Are you listening? It's very possible for you to create an application and then you make sure that you do not repeat the same ID throughout. Similarly, it's very, very possible for you to create an application and you do not repeat the same class name twice. But if you're working with tags, you will always use multiple H1. You always use multiple div tags. You understand? That's how it is. That is why JavaScript is assuming for you. Another question. It's fine. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Let me say that you have and other. So I have another in that same. I can give you that same those classes.
I don't think I understand the question. I don't think I get the question.
Good. Let me just like
okay, learn.
If you are styling it, yes, you can say either your text. It's actually going to talk about text of that.
Header.
When I say section of text, talk about text inside of section. It's not going to be there.
Thing is that it is actually like that in JavaScript, but in this beginner's phase now, right? That's when you start talking about child mode. You start talking about a particular child. Are you talking about the first child? Now, in JavaScript, it's not exactly like that. Well, it's like this. Like maybe you have a particular. I told you that HTML is like a tree, a document tree. So you have the father, you have a parent, they have the children. You understand? In JavaScript, you can actually use a property to select the children node of that parent. You understand? So what am I saying? What am I saying? So let's say you have it. Let's put this side of a D. Control X. I just say D. Okay, I think it's even yes. Let me even show you. What just happened? Okay. All right. So now let me show you what I'm trying to say. So now if I open this up, check right here. Now as you can see, you have first element child. Find it. First element child. No, meaning that there is no element child. Let me console.log div instead. So in this div now, let me just give it a class and name it my div. Now I'm going to come to my JavaScript and I'm going to say const div equals to document.query select. We'll get my div, and I'm going to say console div. Now let me show you what I'm trying to say. If you open up this particular div now, and then you check it out, I need you to note something. So you are going to have first element child. What's the first element child? You understand? So I can now easily, because this is going to be now, I need you to note how this div is. The div is like an object. It's like an object. So to access that particular first element child, how will I access it? Note, it is an object. To access elements in object, how do you access them?
That
If I say let person equals to, then my curly braces, first name, first, no, person and person dot. Exactly. So if I want to consider the first name, I'll say person dot first name. Now this again is an object. If I now want to get the first name inside of this div, how will I get this first element child? Eh? Hmm? How will I get? I just explained, give you a scenario now. What? Yes. What's the class name? Let me come take it to code. Mm-hmm. Is it my div? Check it out again. Check the JavaScript. Check where I wrote the div. If I want to consider the first child, that first element child, how will I do it now? Mm-hmm. All you just have to do is do exactly console.log d dot what? You cannot have first element child. No. Why do you have to say my button again? Because it has already known that your first element child is your what? What's your first element child? Now, as you can see, it is not bringing out what? The button. Do you understand it now? That's how you can have, like, you can try to, like, access a particular child inside of the div in JavaScript. Now, this thing that I just explained now, this is another property. It's very important. Very important, trust me. It's very, very important. Because there's sometimes that you probably want to, like, okay, so for instance now, if you are working on a particular application, if a user does something, you want the first, what's the name? The first value in that div to get printed out. Or you want the first value to come up. Now, these are very, very much important properties. You can go ahead and check. As you can see, you have a lot of properties on this place that you can check out. You have access key, you have first child, you have first element child, you have a lot of them. You have hidden, you have ID, which I think everybody should know right by now. You have HTML, inner HTML, you have inner text. Now as you can see, what's the inner HTML here? You know, the inner HTML is not actually text. Can I say it's not exactly text? Let's look at it. You have button, and then you have what? H1. Why? Why is it like that? Because the div has button and H1. Now, inside of the div, the HTML inside of the div is what? Your button and your H1. I will explain those things later. Don't worry. So you asked a question, so I'm answering. So you have what? On click. You also see that on click is also a property. Now, okay, I'm going to explain on click. I think I have. I have explained. Haven't I? Click in event. Click and your on click is the same thing. Just that your on click is like, yes, is a your on click is an event, is a property, but that property is an event. You understand? That particular property is an event. So now that's basically what it is. So now let me just go back. I don't want to tell you about. I want to take this finish from, like, this is not something that I should actually discuss today. It's like a gradual process. So let me continue what I'm doing so that people will not run away. So what am I saying? What was I even explaining before? Yeah, forgotten. Okay, now you say tag name. Thank you very much. Tag name. So this is basically what your tag names are. Tag name is saying that you are basically picking a particular element by the tag name. Now you have query selector and query selector all. I'm going to explain what query selector is and what query selector all is. Now, I think I've explained a lot today. So I'm going to give us time to, like, just write. Okay, let me just explain query selector. Then I'll give us time to jot things down. Now, yeah. Now, your query selector is basically a selector that you can use in selecting any data value. Now, your query selector can select ID. Query selector can select class name. Query selector can select tag name. Query selector can select anything at all. Do you understand it now? So you have your ID, which is unique to what? Only ID. You have your class name, which is unique to only class name. You have tag name, which is unique to only tag name. But query selector selects all of these properties. Now, what am I saying? I'm going to go ahead and remove all of these things, and I'm going to select them again with query selector. So you see what I'm saying. So now in this place, I can say, what's the ID for button? BTN, right? I can go ahead and say const BTN equals to what? Document dot query selector. Now, if I now want to select button, that's this particular ID of my BTN right here. And I have to put what? Hash to show that what it's a what is an ID. That's what query selector is. Do you understand it? Exactly. If it is class, if you are saying you want to get this particular class of my DPA, how will you get it? Instead of my button, I can easily say const div equals to what? Document dot what? Query selector. And then what am I going to have? I'm going to have dot my div. No, that's what I just said. That when it comes to get element by ID, you cannot call the ID name. Class name, you can call the class name. Tag name, you can call the tag name. But when I'm talking about query selector, you need for your JavaScript to know the kind of document you're actually calling, you need to specify it, isn't it? They need to know that this, if you are starting in CSS, how do you start? If you want to start this particular div now in CSS, how will you start it? Dot my div class dot my div. That's the same thing with query selector. So if I'm going to be calling query selector, I have to call it with the normal CSS way of calling what's the name? Selectors. Are you calling the class name, or you're calling it as an ID, or you're even calling it as an element? I can say const ed equals to what? Document dot what? Query selector, and then we can have what? H1. So now it is now, as you can see, I used what? H1 as an element. Do you understand now? That's basically what your query selector is. So are you calling an ID? Are you calling a what? A class name? Or are you calling a what? Say? You can call data, you can call image, you can call anything. Now, because I did not put anything in the front, it's going to recognize as a what? As an element. But if I put dots here, this is now a what? A class. That's basically what your query selector is. So your query selector is saying that, okay, you're just basically selecting elements. Is it clear to everybody? Is it clear to everybody? Are you sure it's clear? This one is simple. But she said it's hard. Or which one will you prefer?
I think this one.
You can still use it the same way you've been using your get element by ID. So let me say I want to change the BTN. Okay, let's even use the click function. No, let's use that. But let's use it. Okay, let me use something very, very hard for now. Let me use something like, let me say BTN dot inner HTML, right? I can change to, I can now say click me. You understand? So now you have what ID that says what click me. Now if you check it out now, you should see that it has changed to not change. I've got it. So inner HTML, it actually should change. Oh, I'm using click me. I'm using the same thing as here. So let's say don't click me. And then if you check it out now, it has changed to what? Don't click. Still the same way you use it, but the only difference is calling it. Properties don't change. You can have multiple methods. You can have multiple methods of changing, of carrying elements inside of a JavaScript, but properties don't change. You have a question? Properties don't change. You can have multiple methods. How many methods have I just explained now? I've explained elements by ID, class name, query selector, tag name, right? Multiple methods, but properties don't change. Every element has its own property. You just need to know the property you want to change. Are you changing the first child? Are you changing the text contents, the inner text, the inner HTML? You understand? Those are things that you just need to worry about. Is it clear to you? That's basically what your DOM is all about. Now you have query selector all. Now query selector all are used when you are talking about combination of elements. Now, your query selector can actually be used anywhere. You can say, okay, you want to like, so let me show you what I'm trying to say. If I say my div now, so if I say div dot what? First child element, right? So div dot first child element, let me just wrap it up in this place. I can say console.log. Now, we've done this before, haven't we? To see the first child element. What's the first child element here? Button. So if you check it out now, you should have what? The first child element, which was button hash btn. Do you get? But now the problem now is that there's no problem here. So what your query selector always saying is that your query selector works for everything. It works for classes, collection of elements. Your query selector all only works for what? Collection of elements. Let me come again. This div now has a lot of elements inside of it, isn't it? Meaning that that div is a what? Collection of elements, isn't it? Now query for anyone is a element, or you're trying to what? Collect a lot of elements. But query selector all will only work for what? Having all of those elements together. So what am I saying? Coming here now, if I want to take this particular div, what do I say? I'm going to come here and I'm going to say, let me just have this one here. I can easily say const div equals to what? Document dot query selector, query selector all, and then I cannot select what? My div. That's dot, right? Dot my. Do you understand it now? So now, if I say dot value, so now let me now check div. I can now say div dot inner HTML. Should I do it like that? I actually do it like that. Let's console.log first and let's see what we have. So Control R is telling me undefined because the value has not been. I am remove this value. Let's see. Now, as you can see now, it is now giving us like so it is not just giving us the div, it's not actually giving us more what's the name? Okay, let me just leave this for now because I'm looking at everybody's faces. Let me see if I can use a simpler example to explain this. Come.
That's
Sorry? Well, now, one thing about query selector or is I was going to explain it, but I have to like start doing some things I have not done before. So now query selector or is a much more I need everybody to like have an open mind about this. Don't it's not hard. Do you understand? Have an open mind and just listen to it. It's not hard. Now, the reason why I'm not going to explain query selector or again is because it has additional functionality of loops or some other stuff. So now, if you're creating a to-do list application, how exactly is it going to work? Now, you can use query selector or to look through all potential tasks or tasks that have been set by the user. So that whenever user adds new tasks, it gets updated. Do you understand it now? That's what query selector or is saying. You can use query selector or to select all the tasks, and then whenever user adds new tasks, you look through it. Now, we're not talking about loops. That's why it is hard for us to like go into it right now. You understand? So for now, we'll leave query selector or and we'll get back to this maybe in our next class. But before then, do you understand what query selector is? Do you understand what all of these things are? Is it clear to everybody? Apart from query selector all. Is it clear to everybody? Anything? Eh? Is it? So no, query selector or can actually be not only for class. It can be for anything. It can even be for your normal IDs. Only that it has to be like a collection of elements. You get it has to like collection of elements. Now, but for now, query selector has like additional functionality. So once I explain loops, maybe in our next class, then we can now easily do it. And by the way, we're building something in our next class for the first time, starting with building something. Okay, so let us move on to the next one. Let me just give us time to write this and then come back in the next 5 minutes to continue. Maybe I already left the class.